This winter, Investigation with Dr. T returns for a new season called Our Partners, Building Bridges, Delivering Justice. We're going to spotlight our extraordinary partners. These are professionals and agencies who keep our communities safe and shape the future of justice. At NSU's School of Criminal Justice, learning doesn't stop at textbooks. Our students learn from real professionals in the field. These are leaders who are doing the work. They're driving innovation and they're guiding the next generation into meaningful, lifelong careers. So my guests are going to include veterans who help veterans, local and federal law enforcement leaders, police academy trainers, public defenders and state attorneys, mental health and specialty court judges, United Way of Broward County practitioners, and forensic technology experts. This season, each episode is going to offer authentic conversations, real-world insights, and a front-row look at the careers that shape justice in our communities. Join me Thursday evenings, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, starting January 8th on the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel. We're going to spotlight the power of our partnerships, the strength of community, and the career-ready education that sets NSU apart. Tonight we are so excited to welcome to Investigation with Dr. T, Judge Ginger Lauren-Wren. So psyched about this because we're going to be talking tonight about the intersection of justice, mental health, and human dignity. And we're going to be talking about the decriminalization and diversion of individuals who are arrested with mental illness and neurocognitive disorders, and what it truly means to approach justice through a human rights and recovery-centered framework. So excited. Here she is, and I'm going to spotlight her right now and tell you a little bit about my guest tonight. Very special Judge Ginger Lauren-Wren, who is a Broward County Court judge in Florida's 17th Judicial Circuit. First elected in 1997, internationally recognized for pioneering America's first specialized mental health court, which is an innovative human rights-centered model focused on diversion and dignity and recovery for individuals with mental illness and neurocognitive disorders. Her court has diverted more than 23,000 people from jail and became the national blueprint for federal legislation establishing mental health courts across the United States. Judge Lauren-Wren has received numerous national and international honors. She served on President George W. Bush's New Freedom Commission on Mental Health and is a professor at NSU. She's also the author of A Court of Refuge, Stories from the Bench of America's First Mental Health Court, and a sought-after global speaker on mental health, criminal justice reform, therapeutic jurisprudence, trauma-informed courts, and judicial innovation. Oh my goodness, it is such an honor that you have said yes, Your Honor.
Well, first of all, Grace, I'm the one who should be honored because Dr. T is everything to me. You are so amazing and so innovative and in your own right with everything you do. So it is such an honor to be here, really.
Well, I don't know if any of that is true and if I can live up to that, but I know that we are so privileged to not only have you on the faculty, but for you to take time out of your busy schedule. I mean, look, you are a like sought after speaker, and for you to say yes to us during your your schedule that you have going on, I just really can't tell you how much we appreciate it. All of the students here, and on behalf of our dean, Dr. Durham, Dr. Castro, who I think he said he was going to do everything he could to be on the YouTube stream. And so let's dig right in.
Yeah, well, I just want everybody to know, I'm an NSU graduate. Both in law school. I'm graduated Nova Southeast University many years ago, way before the law school was on the Davie campus. We were cited over in Fort Lauderdale, and I just adore Nova. I've been teaching, I think now for about 20 years, both in the doctoral program and in the master's program for forensic psychology, the doctoral program for the Criminal Justice Institute. And I get the benefit, Grace, of really, teaching in real time. You get off the bench, then you go to class, online, and then you share the stories, you share the experiences, and you talk about these innovations. And in all my classes, I think one thing that I've always felt was so important was to include a leadership track, so that if there were any students who really, felt, inspired, if you will, to lead change, they would have the formula to lead change. And so it's just so great to be able to speak here and with you and talk about, the power of communities, to innovate justice, because it's so exciting.
Yeah. Now, you were elected to the bench in 97 and you quickly launched the nation's first mental health court. The
Yeah.
nation's first mental, not the first state in our state, but in the nation, right? That's like huge achievement.
I had a very strange or unique, maybe the better word is a unique pathway in my career. I obviously I graduated from law school, but I really couldn't find a fit in terms of my employment. And I was doing real estate work and this and that. And then all of a sudden, I went to I went to this conference and I started learning for the very first time about the criminalization of people with serious mental illnesses and other related disorders and disabilities. And I have to tell you, Grace, I was shocked. I didn't learn about this in law school at the time. And I just could not believe what I was hearing. And all I kept thinking to myself is, wait a minute. You mean people that are sick are going to jail instead of getting help and health care? And I just really, I just couldn't, I really just couldn't believe it. And um, as I was kind of going through this, I don't know what you would really call it, but I got a call. I mean, everything is so synchronicitous in my world. I get a call from a circuit court judge who says to me, Ginger, there's a job coming open, and I think you'd really, really be a great fit. And I was like, well, oh my gosh, what job, what position is it? And he said there's going to be an opening in what was called at the time the Office of the Public Guardian, which was run by our probate court in Broward County. And if I got the appointment, it would be my responsibility to take care of the finances, the benefits, the welfare, the health of individuals, adults who had no family to care for them and were deemed incapacitated um, by the probate court. And sure enough, I got that position, and that position was the gateway to everything, including the start, if you will, the launch of America's first mental health court. And that really came, I think I have to give credit where credit is due. We just were really fortunate in Broward County. We had some incredible advocates. The late judge and former county commissioner Marcia Beach, who I worked for when I worked at our statewide protection and advocacy system, now known as Disability Rights Florida, but then known as the Advocacy Center for Persons with Disabilities. And that training that I received not only through the public guardian's office, but one day I was speaking at a legislative forum over at South Florida State Hospital, which at the time was not a very therapeutic place. And I had a number of consumers, clients, that were living there, and that living at the state hospital was really their home. We had no community-based system. We had no housing. We had very little to offer back in those years in Broward County. And sure enough, one Friday afternoon, I get a call from an attorney friend of mine, and he says, Ginger, somebody heard you speak over at South Florida State Hospital and thinks that you would be a great fit for a brand new, very high profile mental health position that's coming on board. And I said, really? I said, well, what position is it? He goes, I can't tell you that. I said, well, who called? Who thinks I would be a good fit? He goes, I can't tell you that either. He said, but are you interested? And I remember going out to the state hospital and seeing this, it was devastating. It was so devastating,
What did you see?
as to the lack of care and treatment and rehabilitation that was going on there at the time, that I said, you better believe I'm interested.
Mm.
And it turns out that that position really was the pivotal role that gave me the skills and the training to lead a mental health court. And I was now going to be the plaintiff's monitor of the federal class action of Sanborn versus Childs, Childs being Lawton Childs, the governor of Florida. And it would be my role in that position back in the early mid 1990s to oversee a rather complex settlement agreement. I had carte blanche over the hospital to attend meetings, to see how people were treated, to follow our clients into the community upon discharge, and actually, assess whether or not these discharge plans were qualitative, not qualitative, and then basically, give that information back to our lead general counsel in Tallahassee. So when we think about diversion or we think about discharge planning, you start to realize they're really the same thing. They're really the same thing. And Marcia Beach at the time was the executive director of the Advocacy Center for Persons with Disabilities, and they poured just extraordinary expert training on me at the time. So that's really how I began my path, if you will, into mental health. And then it came a time where my role as a monitor, I guess monitors kind of have a shelf life,
Mm.
and my role was getting to that point. And when I was a little girl, I always wanted to run for elected office. I thought that public service, growing up during the Kennedy era, was really the thing that I wanted to do most. And so at the time, I thought about, okay, well, maybe this is the time to run for office. I was very, active in the community, helping other candidates. And I thought, well, I think a judgeship would be a really great fit. And I ran for judge with these spectacular, seasonal, individually wrapped, iced, spiced gingerbread cookies. And that was, I mean, my whole campaign budget was Little Debbie gingerbread cookies. And I know that that's what gave me the victory,
I'm
because
sure.
I won that election, without opposition. And sure enough, it was at a time where in our court system, people with serious mental illness, were just living, just tragic lives, that there was no treatment available, that families didn't know what to do, judges didn't know what to do, nobody knew what to do. And so essentially, Grace, what was happening in our court system at the time that I came into the judgeship was basically two things: that people with serious mental illnesses and other co-occurring types of disorders, substance use disorders, disabilities, etc., were either getting stuck in our jail system, because our jail system was basically where people would go, as opposed to residential placements. We didn't really have it much in terms of a community system of care at all, or they would revolve like a revolving door: in jail, out of jail, in jail, out of jail. And the judges just didn't know what to do. They had no training. And about 4 months into my judgeship, I got assigned to a county criminal division that I still have. And I got a call from the chief judge at the time. It was Chief Judge Dale Ross. And he said to me, "Congratulations, Ginger, you are our new mental health court judge. When would you like to start?" We knew from a problem-solving court vantage point there was a drug court in Miami-Dade. The first drug court was in Miami-Dade. It started in 1989. And so there was a consensus in the community that we needed a specialized court to deal with these complexities. And I have to tell you, Grace, I didn't believe him. He was a rather conservative judge, and I thought he would change his mind. And I said, if you could only give me 10 days, 10 days, because the same work that I was doing at the state hospital was now going to be replicated in my mental health. And that's really, I think, largely, the story of how, this whole dynamic came to be.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's a lot
It's a
for
lot.
question number one. But let me just go on to the next piece here, which is the fact that your court is grounded in dignity, in human rights, and recovery. How do those principles practically change what happens in a courtroom for the defendant, for the families, and for justice professionals?
That is such a great question. It's got a lot of layers to it. But when I first thought about planning the court process, I kind of set up like this value system, this value model, and I put dignity at the top of the model, because I recognize that the criminalization of people with serious mental illness was a human rights problem. And that's how I always looked at the mental health court, that we were tackling a very serious human rights issue. As a matter of fact, Human Rights Watch came down and spent several days with me observing the court, and included Broward's mental health court in their early publication in 2003 called Ill-Equipped. And I just recognized that, first of all, there's the stigma was so severe, correct?
Yes.
That even if you had a mental illness, even if you believed, like I did, that treatment works and mental health is health, and it's no different than any other illness, people were very reluctant to engage in care. And so I felt that if I'm going to come from, if I could humanize the court, if I could humanize justice, I could make these personal connections. If I came from my heart versus my head, and really talk to people and say, what did you want to do when you were a little girl or when you were a young boy? And let them know that with treatment, recovery is real. and that they could achieve their dreams. And that's kind of the narrative that I was using in court, because I really felt that without dignity and that human connection, we were not going to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, just for our viewers who may or may not understand the difference, there's drug court, and I know this is not one of the questions that we talked about, but it's a softball pitch. So you've got your mental health court and you have drug court. Now we also know that the disease of addiction, is in the DSM and it is considered to be a disorder. So what can you explain to the viewers about the difference between drug court and mental health court so that they understand
Sure,
what
of
kinds of
course.
cases come
Well,
to you?
absolutely. I think even to this day, that problem-solving courts are the greatest court innovations, that ever emerged. And we've got all kinds of problem-solving courts. First of all, on the adult level, also on the juvenile level. We've got drug courts, we've got mental health courts, we've got community courts, we've got safe baby courts. You name it. If you have a problem and you're trying to fill policy gaps in your community, you can do that by, by creating a specialized problem-solving court.
Right.
And they just keep blossoming, in terms of meeting the needs of families, of dependence, of even children in dependency, of course, and just across the lifespan.
Right. You've mentioned diversion before, and that we know that diversion is often discussed but not always understood. So from your perspective, where you sit, what distinguishes true diversion and decriminalization from simply creating an alternative docket?
I'm not in terms of diversion and decriminalization. When I think about decriminalization, I think about, various programs where if you go through it, the charge is going to be dismissed. In diversionary courts, that's not always the case. But it does mean that instead of facing sanctions, correct, you are going to have an opportunity to get, healthcare needs met, housing needs met, substance use needs met, through a treatment court process. And I think that's the largest difference, that we're diverting individuals out of let's say, a jail system, and into a community-based system of care or residential programming where they can really heal instead of face punishment
Right.
and not a punitive approach.
Yeah, and I think that, like you mentioned, this like this rotation, we're revolving door kind of thing where folks are not getting the help that they really need, so they're finding their way back into the justice system. So
Exactly. And
this,
you think about the costs
yeah,
and the waste
right,
of revenue, in that particular dynamic, and the money that could be used toward supporting treatment programs in the community.
exactly. And the police, my background is law enforcement, 20 years NYPD, and so time and time again we see the police responding to calls for assistance with folks who are suffering with mental illness. And yes, there's good training out there, and yes, the CIT programs and the co-responder programs and all this other stuff. But the thing is, like, it's sort of like, when are folks really going to get help? They're going to really get the help they need, because the police are just really kind of like escorting, they're escorts. That's all. They're not really helping, and they just keep getting the same calls for service over and over again. The same thing with the
Yeah,
families. The families, I'm sure, are frustrated.
I was during my time on the President's Commission. I was very, very close. His last name escapes me all of a sudden, but the originating CIT program that came, I
The
believe, out of
Memphis model?
the Memphis model.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, in the Memphis model, I think the concept of CIT is great, but yet we still had officer shootings
Right.
of individuals with serious mental illnesses. So I don't know how necessarily how deep, that training went, but more to the point, they're not clinicians,
Right.
right? They're not clinicians. And I think one of the greatest innovations that we've had, not part of, and I'm just going to add this in at this space because it came to me and I think it's very important, is when peer support specialists emerged as a critical and essential component of our mental health and recovery system of care because it's all about lived experience. And when you have somebody, who is suffering, from their mental illness, and then they meet somebody with lived experience, and then they say, wait a minute, I was where you were. I was living in your shoes. And
Exactly.
then I made a choice. I made a decision. And peer support specialists, I think, to me, is probably one of the most important components of our mental health systems of care.
Yeah. Now, in reading your bio, we talked about 23,000 individuals diverted from jail through the Broward Mental Health Court. What outcomes, human or systemic, stand out to you as the most meaningful impact of this work? And even if you have a story,
I
I always love,
Oh my gosh, I have a
a
million
real story.
stories. Well, first of all, I just go back to the fundamental dignity piece and recovery dynamic, and the fact that you're sharing that knowledge base of that, really every day in court, I would grab a legal pad, I would pull the back, cardboard, of the legal pad off, and I would use it as a graph, and I would draw a big circle and make a pie, and then actually talk about recovery, and then talk about the different components of what components consist, in terms of a part of recovery. What does it mean? It's not just about taking a pill,
Right.
right? It's not just about taking a pill. It's about, staying fit. It's about doing the things that you love. Maybe some people love artwork. Maybe some people love to cook. It's about bringing your families into the fold and getting that buy-in, that recovery is real and that treatment works. And so every day, I can't tell you how many cardboard covers I've gone through in all these years. But, when you, I think, illustrate, wait a minute, this is not just about taking a pill or getting a shot. This is really a holistic treatment plan that people could design for themselves, and really take ownership of their wellness. And I think that really hit a chord with a lot of the folks that I was working with.
Right. I don't know why. I'm just going to ask you this question. It's not one of the questions that we talked about, but are you familiar with Homeboy Industries by any chance?
Yes,
Father Gregory Boyle?
yes.
You remind me your philosophy, your vibe. It reminds me of him and his vision and his philosophy, where the dignity of gang members, former gang members, is like foremost, and that he does believe in recovery and he does believe in change, and
Sure.
that's where the hope is. And all of his books talk about all these different stories, these
You got to
success
have hope.
stories.
Hope, I always say, and I've always said that hope is tangible. It's not just a feeling. It's got substance to it. It's powerful and transformative,
Right.
correct?
Yes.
And that is how powerful hope is to distill in the people that you're working with. It's which is why I go, well, what did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Right.
You can do that. There's nothing stopping you from achieving that. You could
Exactly.
achieve, anything. And I think that when the students here, I think they'll relate to what I'm saying, but when we think about adverse childhood experiences, when we appreciate the impact of trauma, when we think about gender, and the impact of victimization and abuse on women and children and, social determinants of health and poverty, and institutional racism, correct?
Are we allowed
Um,
to say that? Wait.
I think so.
Oh, okay. No, I just wasn't sure.
Oh, and sure, it's implicit bias, and all of these factors are social determinants,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so we have to recognize the impact that that has, and how we, then overcome it, in our systems of care. And I just think everything goes back to dignity.
Yes, 100%. Let me give you two comments that you're getting from YouTube anyway. We're going to go into the webinar question and answers in a minute. But I just wanted to tell you that Jamie McCarthy, one of our PhD students, here's what she says. Wow, what I would not give to have this kind of compassion in our courts where I am. This kind of approach is something that really gives mental health and reform real pathways to healing, big respect. So that's from
Oh,
Jamie. And then I know who this is. This is Dr. Castro is telling you that we're beyond proud to have Judge Lerner-Wren teaching in our program, beyond proud and extremely fortunate.
oh,
So just wanted to take that
beautiful.
kind of like commercial pause.
I'm so proud of the court, of the work of the court, and we were evaluated nationally, by three different, organizations, and and they were looking at different factors in each of these evaluations, how, once people got diverted out of jail and into the community, how long did they, how did their recovery last? Did it have, some real, teeth to it? And how did people feel in a specialized treatment court versus a general criminal court, for example? And I remember being in Washington at a conference, and one of the most amazing law professors from the University of Virginia came up and started talking about the outcomes of this national evaluation. And the way he put it was that what the consumers in Ginger's court, Judge Wren's court, said being in mental health court was like going out for an ice cream sundae. It couldn't have been any better. That's what I was looking for,
That's
right?
yeah.
That it's a treat, that it's special, that it makes you feel
Mm,
good,
yeah.
and that's when I knew I've hit it.
So you've advised these policymakers at the highest levels and influenced national legislation. So what lessons should today's judges or law enforcement leaders, policymakers in criminal justice take from the early days of mental health court innovation?
Well, I think the first thing is that if you want to create change, you could do it. I teach in my course, for example, and always have, there's a leading change theory and evidence, very popular, evidence-based leading change theory, John Cotter's 8-step leading change model. It's, You could look it up anywhere. I happened to follow that model instinctively when I was leading the task force for the mental health court to implement the mental health court through our task force. We had a collaborative. And I think one of the most important things for communities is that community collaboration. You need everybody, at the table who can make a difference and make it happen. And how do you create that sense of urgency? How do you really articulate, the vision of what it is that you want to accomplish and what it is that you want to implement? And I think communication, about that is everything.
Yeah. Okay, my final question is going to be this, and then we're going to go to the Q&A, which there's a lot of questions. We won't get to all of them, but we're going to pick the best of the best. They're all the best. I don't want to say that because then I'm like offending somebody, but no, they're all great questions, but we are going to end on time as we usually do. But here's my last question, looking ahead. And I love what, we're talking about hope, and I think we should end on that note, but what gives you hope? And also at the same time, what concerns you most about the future of mental health, informed justice in the United States and globally?
I'm going to start with that part, Grace, because I think what concerns me significantly is that we don't have the same type of general consensus about the importance of funding mental health.
Right.
In terms of looking at mental health like any other healthcare. And, we're always, at the bottom of the rung. And so just for example, in the state of Florida, there's only 8 states in the United States without Medicaid expansion. Florida has never had Medicaid expansion. The legislature has never passed Medicaid expansion. And that's a real significant limiting factor because through Medicaid expansion, you could fill a lot of gaps in housing, gaps in just whatever you could imagine, getting medicine, getting healthcare. So I worry a lot about the stigma. There was a suggestion. I won't go into detail, but I heard that there was a suggestion that we should go back to the old asylums, the old dangerous, archaic warehousing of people with serious mental illness. That terrifies me.
Well, that makes sense because it feels like we're sometimes going into the dark ages. So that would just kind of make sense. I know I said I wasn't going to do any like black eyes or controversy, but you see, I can't help myself. I'm sorry. But so that's what concerns you. But what gives you hope?
I don't know. I'm just a very positive person. I don't know. I mean, I think that I just I'm a very positive thinking person, and I feel like from an attitudinal vantage point, we could do anything.
Yeah.
We could do anything we put our minds to. That all we have to do is follow our passion. If we just follow our passion, if students just follow your passion, you will make your way
right
into your goals.
Exactly. And I think that's it. Follow your heart. If we can just kind of see each other in the mirror, in a way, we're just kind of walking each other back home is the bottom line. And so thank you so much for your work, for your vision, for your commitment, your insight, all of it. We're just so grateful. I'm going to go to the questions now. John, I'm giving you mic privileges for the question you have about police agencies doing better at the front end. John? John, don't let me down, man. Come on. All right. I don't know what happened. Sometimes they get shy, or they stepped away for a second, and I didn't know that I was going to call them.
Exactly.
It's like when God calls you and you're not ready, that's not good. All right. So what he says here in his question, which I think is a really good one, is what can police agencies do better at the front end during crisis response, uh, charging decisions or documentation to improve outcomes for individuals who may later enter mental health court?
Well, that's a really great question. We've seen, like you brought up, Grace, early on, all these different models now, from co-responder to CIT. Um, I actually think that one of the most important elements is really number one, to be well trained in mental health, and really get a full, global understanding of psychosis and, everything, recovery. Um, and I also think it's very important to understand the impact of trauma.
Yes.
And if you're not practicing any discipline, I don't, whatever it is, judicial, as a physician, as a law enforcement officer, as a bus driver. I mean, if we all need to be trauma informed, because that explains so much. And we could see through that, and then we could really see people and meet them where they are.
Yes, exactly. Great. Tom, you have a great question. I'm going to give you mic privileges. Um, are you able to enable your mic now? Tom? So now I'm seeing a pattern, right?
Yep.
And now I'm seeing a pattern. So it's we're gonna oh Tom, go ahead. You raised your hand, Tom. What's up? Go ahead. You got it. You got mic privileges, no? All right, I'll read it for you. You've mentioned dignity quite a few times. It is one of the main principles of procedural justice. You've also touched on implicit bias, which is contrary to the principle of neutrality. Are you familiar with the theory, and how does it affect your philosophy as a judge?
That's such a great question. So when the court, I was very fortunate that when the court first started, I reached out to some forensic experts and I said, hey, do you have any experts that in constitutional law and, you know, mental health that you think might be willing to act as a consultant for me? Because I was a little worried when I started the court because I wasn't a constitutional expert. And I wanted to make sure that everything I was doing was constitutionally appropriate. And so I picked, one of my girlfriends, a forensic psychologist, said, why don't you go ahead, and call Professor Michael Perlin from New York University, retired um, professor. And I just called him up out of the blue, for example. I told him what I was going to do in terms of mental health court, my goals, my values. And I said, I just feel like I need a constitutional expert, for example. And would you be willing to do that? He said, you better believe I will be willing to do that. So I had an expert that I can go to for consultation on the legal side. Then I learned about the theory, which dovetails into procedural justice, called therapeutic jurisprudence. How can we provide therapeutic justice? And there were two law professors out of the University of Miami that were leading this therapeutic jurisprudential movement early in the 1990s and late 80s. And I called up Professor Bruce Winnick at the University of Miami Law School, told him what I was doing, asked him if he would be my consultant in the area of therapeutic jurisprudence, which really dovetails into procedural justice. How do we give people voice? How do we give people validation? How do we really practice our emotional intelligence on the bench, for example, or as lawyers for that matter. And so I got some really great training through that, really just practice, making it a priority that I really wanted to make that human connection with the people that I served. And I had to make sure that they felt they were validated through the work that I was doing. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think it does. I'm going to go to YouTube for a second. This is from Jamie McCarthy. What do you think best helps those justice professionals in making the shift from punishment, a punishment process, to a more dignity-centered one when working with individuals who have mental illness?
Great question. Fantastic question. I think that that the paradigm, the more popular these problem solving courts have gotten, I think the more interested other judges become of kind of wanting to put their toe in the water in terms of practicing from this type of approach. That we're all presenting at judicial conferences, we're all presenting at bar conferences on these subjects and talking about it. And I think the more we talk, the more other lawyers and judges learn. And I hope that they'll be more interested in practicing it and applying it in their courtrooms.
Yes, yes. I'm going to. This is not a question. Dr. Castro is giving everybody a suggestion that anybody interested in learning about the impact of trauma on everyday behavior should check The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. Recent and research-based. He says a true gem. I also posted that in the webinar
Oh,
chat.
that's a fantastic resource. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And so like this kind of goes hand in hand with like if many of us have experienced trauma, and so it sort of is the origin, perhaps, of why folks act the way they do when they do, and then it's almost always some kind of like hurt injury that's been unresolved,
It
right?
is. It is. And that's why I think it's really important to teach as you go. So if you could take your courtroom and turn it into a classroom, then the lights come on, like Oprah, that aha moment, talking like Dr. Walker, Dr. Lenore Walker and I, at one point, we really wanted just to do a women's court. We had a little difficulty in the jail, making that happen, but we worked on that. And it was amazing because women didn't understand the evidence base in terms of issues of victimization and trauma and abuse and what that meant in terms of your own well-being or drug use or this or that or depression or suicidality or whatever. And it really is very, very important, I think, to teach, to really teach as we go in the field so people don't think they're bad. It's not about being bad. Quite frankly, it's just about your lived experiences when, you're young, and we all know how prevalent adverse childhood experiences are.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Nolis, you have a question that I think is really good about balancing public safety with dignity. Nolis, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
From the bench, how do you balance public safety with dignity and human rights when deciding whether diversion is appropriate for individuals with mental illness
I
or
say bravo, bravo for that question, because I have to be honest with you. When I started designing the mental health court, first of all, I'm very glad I was a county judge, not a circuit judge, because I'm dealing with low-level crime. And I wanted to really understand the element of risk. And I didn't, and I felt it would be a threat to the court if, in fact, I did not take the issue of public safety and risk and put it on the very top of my analysis of whether I should accept a case, a person into the court based on a certain charge or past history, or quite frankly, find that they're not, I don't find them appropriate for the court. I can't manage the risk. And so it really came down to dynamic risk management.
Right. Okay. Dr. Castro is also saying about this book, Dr. Matei's basic premise is that addictions are in most cases, if not in all, trauma-based, and that the author is a psychiatrist and researcher out of Vancouver. So I'm going to give Yara talking privileges, and she has a really good question. Yara, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, go for it. Ask the judge a question, please.
Yeah. 1 second. Sorry. Yes.
What happened?
Well, first, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we hear you. We hear you great. Ask your question.
Okay. So, honestly, thank you for hosting the judge, and thank you for joining us. It's always nice to hear different side and different point of views, but I wanted to really understand a little bit about the systems. Like, how do you guys hold people, institutions, all these resources accountable for, whatever you rule for people or programs for them to join? And how do we keep them accountable?
Yeah.
While there's very scarce, I don't know if I use the right term, like the resources are very, very limited, and they're
Yes.
very low.
Yes.
Like, how can
Yes.
we expect people to be taken and be in those programs and hold them accountable to finish them and complete
Wow.
them while they're very limited?
That is
Good question.
really a fantastic question.
Thank you.
And I think that it was, we talked about community collaboration, but you've got to have a few bulldogs leading that guiding coalition to hold all of these agencies. I had no grants. Mental health court had no grants, no funding. We did all of this through the goodwill of the community, but we had a secret weapon. And
This is what we need to hear, your secret weapon.
And we had former public defender Howard Finkelstein. Everybody might know Help Me Howard on WSBN. And he was the assistant public defender back when the court was first getting started, and one of the biggest advocates to leave the court. And he can be extraordinarily persuasive. And I just think I think it's about advocacy. Sometimes, Yara, I hate to say this, sometimes it involves shaming. But we had such a big ask. We were asking every social service agency in Broward County that interfaces with persons with mental illness to redesign their service model so that they will support the court. In terms of case management, in terms of sending case managers into court. We weren't asking for dollars. We were asking, to just help.
Provide resource.
Yes.
Well, the reason I ask you this, and I'm sorry if I'm prolonging my question, because I'm also enrolled in the master program of MFT, Marriage and Family Therapy. So one of the classes that we took, it regarded, all of the mental disorders that are considered as diagnosis within the DSM-5, right? And for example, one of them was like, if somebody have a mental illness that kind of leads them to like, pedophile or like sex offenders and whatsoever. And part of the things that they have to, and mandated by court, certain programs that they need to join. But unfortunately, a lot of these programs are not provided for free, and these people cannot afford to pay for them. Not only just the shaming that comes with and the stigma that comes with that, with that order. And then they can't do it because they can't pay for it. So they end up going back to jail. So it's like a cycle.
Yes. And and that really goes back, to Grace's early question, about if you're worried about anything, Ginger, what is it? And I say the funding. We would not have had anything in mental health court if Howard Finkelstein and Fred Goldstein from the Broward County Public Defender's Office at the time did not demand the state attorney's or request the state attorney's office to assemble a federal grand jury to investigate Broward County's mental health system. The truth of the matter is Broward's mental health court is an outgrowth of that federal grand jury report, basically finding, and this is a quote out of the Sun Sentinel, that in terms of Broward County's mental health system of care, there was nobody responsible to anybody for anything.
Right.
So nobody was held accountable.
Right. So we really needed to transform our community-based systems of care and really build up that leadership piece through a guiding coalition.
Great question. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, look, we could probably sit here for days and talk. This is so fascinating. I know our students are just so eager to maybe have a follow-up with you. How can they get in touch with you if they have any questions or
so
mentorship opportunities or something like that?
You could just look me up, Judge Wren at the Broward County Courthouse. You'll get my email address. You're welcome to email me. I answer all my emails, and and if you'd like to come and sit into court, even if it's my regular division, still you're going to get that same therapeutic jurisprudential approach from a mental health vantage point, because I know the evidence base.
Yes.
And it's 1 in 5, 1 in 4. And, you don't need a specialized court necessarily to do wonderful therapeutic work.
Absolutely. Well, it's just been such an honor, your honor, to have you. And
Ditto.
Can't wait to see you in person. Thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you so much for
insight.
having me, and to all the students. I wish you great success. Follow your heart, and thank you for the wonderful, wonderful questions.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Welcome.
So join me next Thursday for another exciting partnership highlight, and that is command presence inside the Davie Police Department. We're going to be exploring leadership, training, and teamwork that define modern policing with two special guests, Chief James Poland, Assistant Chief of the Davie Police Department, and Lieutenant Jason Rivera, who is a training lieutenant. He's also in charge of a lot of the special programs. Really, I don't know where we would be without the partnership of like the 17th Judicial Court and like Davie Police Department. So join me next week for insight into law enforcement. And I'm so grateful again to Judge Ginger Lauren-Wren for being with us tonight. We so much appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. Good night.